We're on the eve of Halloween, and we're asking if Luka is the scariest late-game shot maker in the NBA. Plus, Jonathan Kuminga gets benched by the Golden State Warriors, and the 76ers get picked on by the NBA. That's all ahead on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Doug Branson, host of the Locked On Hornets podcast, and I'll be your shot clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. Speaking of, with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore, and from the Locked On Bulls podcast, it is Hayes. Matt, Hayes, let's get right into it. The Mavericks finished the second night of a back-to-back with a big win in Minnesota, 120-114. They are 3-1 to start the season. Luka and Kyrie looked locked in to begin the year. Were we too quick to dismiss Dallas's chances to defend their West title, Matt?
I wasn't, because I was already saying that they were in good position to have a monster season. Look, I think they're going to be beasts in the regular season. I think they're absolutely going to crush. You look at this team, and the most impressive thing to me is the defense is carried over. I was worried after losing Derrick Jones Jr., Josh Green, just small changes that may be okay, like they might be better overall, but what if they don't have that kind of identity? But they've carried it over. This team is a bunch of dogs defensively, and they have firepower. I'm telling you, this team's going to win 55+ in the West.
I 100% agree. Like, I was not down on the Dallas Mavericks' chance to repeat in the West, especially after adding Klay Thompson. And when people were kind of down on Klay Thompson's preseason, actually was like, just wait. Klay Thompson still shot 39% almost from three. He's going to be good. He's been phenomenal. And Luka Doncic has been amazing as well. You look at how the role players fit. You look at Derek Lively and all those guys. Like, I just really like the depth of this Dallas Mavericks teams. I like the way, the different looks that they can throw at you. And overall, like, Luka is one of the best players in the NBA, and you always want to trust talent. And this Dallas Mavericks team has a lot of talent.
Okay, you two may have been high on them early, but I heard a lot of chatter about OKC, being the team to beat in the West. What have you seen so far from Dallas that doesn't make you feel like OKC is ready to be crowned over them?
I mean, look, I think OKC is going to be awesome, right? But stuff happens. If you told me straight up who's going to win more games, the Thunder or the Mavericks, I mean, like, probably the Thunder. If you tell me he's going to go further in the playoffs, I'm probably going to say Mavs. And I was one that, to your point, Doug, was talking about, like, well, yeah, they'll be good in the regular season, but I don't know how good they'll be in the playoffs. And instead, like, now I'm like, well, okay, if I don't trust OKC still, and I still don't in the playoffs, not that I don't trust them, just that I'm not sure they can make it through all 3 rounds to reach the finals, then Dallas is right there with them. So I just think it's a really interesting mix this season where a lot of the teams I would trust in the playoffs in the West aren't as good this season. And a lot of the teams I think are absolutely awesome this season have some playoff questions. I think that's what's going to be fun to answer throughout the rest of the year.
I think that it just comes down to how Isaiah Hartenstein, when he does come back, how much more dangerous than this OKC Thunder team looks after that point, and can they sustain it? Will they be able to sustain health? Yeah, they got Alex Caruso, who's not scoring well for them, but has been so important to their defense. But he's another player that has had major injury concerns. So right now, I'm going to bet on the Dallas Mavericks mainly because they've been there before. But I wouldn't be surprised if the OKC Thunder, after Steen comes back and everybody else, that they run away with it maybe as far as in the regular season. But when the playoffs are on, we all know that becomes a different game. And until I see it sustained by the OKC Thunder in the playoffs, I'm going to bet on the team that was there last year in the Mavericks.
And we know that playoff basketball is so much about making tough shots at the end of games, and Luka was on full display with that last night against the Timberwolves. Here is Nick Angstead and company from the Locked On Mavericks podcast with more on that.
Who helped win this game? Like, Luka did, for all we're talking about with Luka. He did shoot 37%, 10 of 27 from the field, 24 points for Luka. But he had some tough clutch buckets late, like just some really big ones. The 32-foot, that's official. That's what the official distance was. 32-foot three that bombed, made it 117-109 with a minute left. Like, that basically sealed the game. He also had the scoop layup around Gobert with 2 minutes left. That made it a 5-point game again.
The thing that I love the most about Luka is he's an absurd competitor. And when the moment is big, it doesn't matter what he's shooting in the game. It doesn't matter how many turnovers, how many missed shots, whatever the case may be. He wants the ball in his hands, and he's going to make a play. So that's what you saw tonight. I mean, that's why he's an incredible player.
All right, Hayes, is Luka, he's an incredible player, and they love him there on the Locked On Mavericks podcast, but we're almost at Halloween, so we're going to ask the scary question. Is he the scariest shot maker, late game, tough shot maker in the NBA, or do you still have a name above Luka right now?
I mean, yes and no. I'm still going to right now pick it as far as in the fourth quarter in the late games. Like, Anthony Davis has just been a better fourth quarter player so far in the regular season, in this season, the start of this season, than Luka Doncic has been. He scored more points. He gets more rebounds. I trust him more on the defensive side of the ball. So overall, as the overall better player in the fourth quarter, I'm still going to pick Anthony Davis. But if you're talking about the difficult shot maker, I guess I'll give it to Luka there. I guess as far as making difficult shots, but still going to go AD right now.
AD, come on, not for late game. You're not putting the ball in Anthony Davis's hands and being like, go make a play unless it's a play to get fouled. Come on now, Hayes. We know that's not what we're going to be doing.
He scores more points than Luka in the fourth quarter by a lot.
I'll just say this. I think that what we're talking about here is the difference between what the metrics are and how it feels. And I'll just say this. I think if you're the other team, you are just absolutely terrified every nanosecond that Luka's got the ball when the clock is winding down. Like, it's absolutely horrifying. And like, a lot of this is, it's tough to kind of ascertain. Luka's not really an elite shooter. He's just not. And like, that shot last night from 32 feet, that's a terrible shot. And yet, like, the minute he put it up, I was like, well, that's good. Bang. Like, there are guys that have that ability, and Luka Doncic is one of them. He is an absolute stone cold killer when it gets late in games. And there is no one in the NBA, I'll say this, that relishes that opportunity like Luka does. Luka loves shutting up opposing fan bases and teams. He lives for that stuff, and he's very good at it.
We talk a lot about on Locked On Hornets, Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, or we're looking for the signs of will those players become all NBA players? And I talk about one of my check boxes is, do they hit shots where it would be a terrible shot for anyone else in the league, and it looks like a terrible shot when it happens, and it still goes in? There is just something, you can't touch that. It is not a tangible thing. There's just something about that quality, and Luka certainly has that. Before we move on, Halloween tomorrow, have you guys picked out your Halloween costumes? Are you ready to go, Matt?
Yeah, I think I'm good. So, those all green outfits that look like you're on a green screen and you can make it look like whatever. I'm going to make myself invisible because that's like the league's changes to officiating this season.
Oh, all right.
We're back to this nonsense. Yes. Nonsense of them allowing too many threes. But in reality, I actually have a really sick frog costume because I did trunk or treat with my kiddo and we did a whole jungle theme. So I got this giant frog costume. Got a lot of props on it last week. Excited to go trick or treating tomorrow.
All right, both options there green. I'll just point that out. Hayes, what are you going for as Halloween this season?
I'm going dressed as the most scary thing for Clippers fans. That's Kawhi Leonard's knee.
Oh,
Kawhi Leonard's knee for Halloween. But all jokes aside, I'm going to be Jason Voorhees for Christmas. There you go.
Classic, love that. I'm going as the desk from inside the NBA. A lot of tributes for the guys behind the desk this season. I'm going to give some love to that big, beautiful desk that they sit at for every show. So that's my costume. All right. Coming up, let us know what you're dressed as, by the way, in the YouTube comments, and make it funny, or we'll be disappointed. Okay, coming up next on the Locked On NBA podcast, Jonathan Kuminga was dressed as a bench player last night and didn't seem too happy about it. And later, does the NBA have it out for the Philadelphia 76ers? That's all ahead. Stick with us. Today's episode of the Locked On NBA is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time makes buying tickets to your next event even easier. And it's not just sports. Locked On NBA, all about sports. Game Time, it's not just about sports. You can get great deals on concerts and events too. And with Game Time Picks, they gather up all of the best deals and they put them all in one place. It's very easy to find the best deals. And I love that because it's less work for me and more savings for my family. So I love it. What I love even more, though, is the all-in pricing feature where I toggle it on and it shows me the total upfront price with no surprise fees at checkout. I just want to see what I'm paying and then go forward. That's what Game Time does. They make it easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and then redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel and Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Okay, Golden State got a big win last night as well, 124-106 over the New Orleans Pelicans. We're actually going to do both sides of this matchup in this segment. The big story in Golden State, though, no Steph Curry. We were wondering in the last episode whether Steve Kerr was going to make some adjustments, and he certainly did, a big one. Jonathan Kuminga going to the bench. Here is Locked On Warriors with their analysis of that move.
Saying that I don't think Kuminga has been put in the best positions to succeed in terms of lineup combinations. He was in much better positions tonight in terms of lineup combinations. Playing next to Andrew Wiggins is the chief issue for Kuminga, I think, in the normal starting lineup. I think playing next to Buddy Hield, who's a knockdown three-point shooter, as opposed to Andrew Wiggins, who's more of a driver and slasher, would benefit Kuminga's game. It's hard to have any complaints with how it all worked tonight. If bringing Kuminga off the bench puts him in better lineup combinations and leads to this sort of night from him, then Steve Kerr's a genius.
Steve Kerr is the meme. How does he keep getting away with this? Weren't we just talking about him being comfortable with the offense in Steph's absence, and here he is making a move? What happened to that, and was it the right move, Hayes?
I do think it was the right move. I mean, when you look at the results, at least so far through one game, Kuminga played a pretty solid game, 17 points off the bench, scoring pretty effectively, 2 steals, 1 block, like he was able to get all over the court. So I think so far, small sample size, that it looks like it was the right move. Buddy Hield in that starting lineup, 28 points. So they got the win. That was the most important thing. So I say for right now, possibly, but keep your eye on it to see if it keeps going this way.
I mean, look, the key here is that Steve Kerr has reached that point in his career after 4 titles and a million other titles as a player, that he is reaching that point where he's like, I don't care about all this nonsense anymore. I'm going to do what makes best sense for the team. He did this in the Olympics, and everyone got mad at him about Jason Tatum. They won gold. He goes ahead and he moves Kuminga because he's like, no, we just need more spacing. We just need like different lineups because Steph Curry's not out there. It's a simple basketball move. And it seems fine, but this quote from Kuminga, I just think is so indicative of where Kuminga's at, because he says, it wasn't my decision. I got a text. This is how it's going to go. This is who it's going to be. And I went with it. What am I supposed to do? Ask why I'm not starting? That's the decision of the coach, and we will follow what he's going to do. I'm sorry, but like in context of all the comments that Kuminga has made, like it's just very evident that like Kerr did this for basketball reasons and they were sound, but he also did it knowing that it was going to make Kuminga mad and further alienate him and further push him out. And he's just like, yeah, but I don't care. You need to understand like what's best for the team and try and understand that. There's going to be this tension, and it's going to keep going until either Steve Kerr's gone or Kuminga's gone, because Kuminga has plans for his career like every NBA player does, and they do not involve the role that Steve Kerr sees him playing on Golden State.
Okay, Hayes, what do you think about that? Who's leaving, Kuminga or Kerr? Who's the last one standing?
You know what? If you would have asked me that 2 years ago, I would have probably said Kuminga. But I don't know. It's starting to feel like, and not to say that they're going to force Kerr out or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years Kerr looks at this and he's like, I've done enough here. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Now, more than likely it's going to be Kuminga, because you're gonna bet on your coach that's won you everything that he's won for that team. But I was just saying that I would not be surprised if in a few years we look at this and say Steve Kerr's moved on somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
I think the thing with Kerr is that, yeah, I think the thing with Kerr, he's, you know, he may just reach a point where he's like, my back hurts. I won a bunch of titles. I'm tired of dealing with this nonsense. I'm out. And he might just call it, and that's fine. Or he might go do something else or go coach. He used to actually be a columnist for Yahoo, believe it or not. True story. But if Kerr stays, to me, this just like looks, I will also say this. I think if the front office had told Kerr, look, he's a big part of our future. We have to make good with him. Like, we think that he's going to be the bridge post Steph, then I think the situation would be different. The front office doesn't want to trade him. They haven't included him in any talks, but I still kind of get this sense of, all right, but why haven't they gone in on the extension deal? Why haven't they committed to him further? I still think that the team itself is uncertain of what Jonathan Kuminga is going to be for the Warriors long term.
So we have a situation here where Wiggins was out, Steph Curry out. It doesn't look as serious as maybe they were fearing at first. So they've got to survive a little bit here, and they make the move to send Kuminga to the bench. But then you have this other situation, and Locked On Warriors talked about this as well, where you have Lindy Waters, who was probably the player of the game for Golden State, 21, 8, and 4. Should Steve Kerr consider further adjustments to get through this period before Steph returns? Matt.
I think that Kerr will probably have a pretty good sense matchup to matchup. One of the fun things when a star player out, honestly, is that coaches get to look at those kind of decisions, right? Is they actually get to be like, what actually makes us best to match up with this team versus when you have a team with a lot of guys that are locked up on big money, you kind of have to just like plug and play those guys and figure out everything around them. That flexibility, I think, really helps you. And I think we're seeing that Kerr's willing to go outside the box and really look at the skill sets and maximize it. And so far, it's working out great. A lot of the advanced metrics say that the Warriors are really, really good this season. I don't know if that's schedule. I don't know if that's just the spot. I don't know if it's just small sample. But I'm curious to see how they look in this small stretch when Curry is out, and then if they can integrate Curry back in with what they're learning now about this roster.
Okay, let's go to the other side of this matchup. New Orleans, they get Zion Williamson back. He scores 31. Brandon Ingram scores 30, but they really didn't get much else other than that. And the offense didn't look very good. Let's go to Locked On Pelicans host Jake Madison with his take.
Trading twos for threes, but not even efficient twos because they weren't getting to the rim. You're going to lose that game. And they did. And that's why the more talented team here didn't win the basketball game. That's a problem. And we've seen this through the first 4 games. They're not doing what they need to do. They do not look like an offensive team in 2024. The defensive issues, I think, are there because they're missing Murray, and then they missed Herb Jones in this game, and that'll get sorted out, though Zion's defense in this was particularly bad. That can get fixed, and we've seen that be a hallmark under Willie Green, but there's been no growth offensively right now. And I don't think adding Murray into that was going to really fix things. And that's a real big problem here. And that's why something has to change. This is the game that makes me think New Orleans might need to move on from their head coach.
Whoa! Just a few games into the season, and we have our first call for a coach's job in this version of this show's history. Matt, what do you think? Is it time for Willie Green to get the boot? We're just a couple games in.
Yeah, it's too early. Let's slow down a little bit there, but I get what Jake's saying because the process is bad. One of the things, if you look into the advanced metrics for New Orleans over the past couple of seasons, they give up worse shots than what the opponent actually shoots. Now, some of that I think is personnel and closeouts. Like you have guys that can close out great, like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, those kind of defenders. But on the other end, some of it's probably luck. And so if the defense hasn't been good, this offense has never been prolific. And now you start to be in a situation where it's like, all right, if the defense is regressing this season and the offense is still stuck in neutral or worse, where are you really getting to? And like we all kind of said, this is my big thing is the project wasn't finished. You traded for DeJounte Murray. You started to reshape the roster, but you kept Brandon Ingram despite not extending him. Do something. Like you can complete this roster and they'll look a lot better. Zion with shooters is a model I think that works. You should at least find out, but they just want to go with these half measures and it's not going to get it done, Hayes.
I agree with you. I think yes, the DeJounte part of all of this does make sense. Like, I don't want to overlook that. You got one game with DeJounte Murray. He was supposed to come in. He was supposed to help that. And without DeJounte, you've basically gone back to what we've seen the last few years with the New Orleans Pelicans, and we've seen this story. And eventually you're going to have to pull a trigger and move somebody, whether it's Ingram, whether it's McCollum. Somebody has to move for you to truly go into a different direction and try to build differently around Zion. It's already bad enough that you're so thin at the center position. If you can even call it thin, it's damn near non-existent. But I just think it's too early to be talking about firing a coach who has an over 500 record with you while you're here in the midst of you starting to change your roster. First, figure out the roster, and then if with that new roster, Willie Green can't get it done, then I think you look to move on from your coach. I don't think you need to do that right now.
That's really interesting, though, because you've got now two examples that we've talked about: a coach making adjustments with some adversity and getting a win and getting some good stuff out of some of those bench players, and then you've got the reverse situation. And I wonder too if there's a little bit of like, if you know, you know, and it's not going to change. Are there some issues that have been bubbling for a while here? I mean, it might only be game 3 of this season, Matt, but has this been going on for a while?
I'll just say this. The people I've talked to in the league have said the locker room loves Willie Green, and like there's a real connection there and that there's a real belief in him. I don't always know if that's the best thing. Like there's a lot of players, coaches, I think that have done, to be honest, horribly. Some of the best loved coaches are just terrible in terms of their ability to get wins. But Willie Green's also made the playoffs. You can't really sit here and say that he hasn't had any success. He's made the playoffs. So like, I don't think you can really look here and be like, all right, let's go ahead and abandon ship here. These are long-term issues. I continue to believe this is a roster problem, coupled with injury issues. I think those two things you need to be able to be certain. And the other thing is, do you really want to punt on the season? Because if you put in an interim, you're basically punting on the season. And if you punt on the season, it's another year that you lost, and a pretty important one, given the contracts that you've handed out to try and figure out where you're at in the West. So I'm not sure that that's the right move here. It's better to get through this season, and then you can evaluate.
Hayes, if you had one piece of advice for Willie Green to cool off the hot seat, what would it be?
Win. That's it. I like win. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I think Willie Green has done a good job for what he like to Matt's point. Like, he's made the playoffs. He has an over 500 record. Like, we know that this roster is imperfect. And unless you're looking at, to me, you don't move off from Willie Green until you look at the roster and say, we feel like we have the roster here, so it must be the coach that we got to change. I don't think you should make that move right now.
Mine would be tell Brandon Ingram to start shooting threes for the love of God. For the love of God. Like, Jake's biggest thing there when he was right about the Pels can't be losing the 3-point battle like they are. They just cannot be. They have weapons. They have shooters. Use them. I'm sorry that it's not fun. I know that the midi is more fun. I get it. You need to win the game. Take more threes.
I think they attempted 22 threes and the Warriors made 21. I might have those numbers slightly off, but it was somewhere close to there. Okay, so issues for the Pelicans on the court, issues for the 76ers off the court. Coming up, are the Philadelphia 76ers and Joel Embiid being targeted by the NBA, or are they bringing it all on themselves? Matt and Hayes will discuss that next. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. There is a free daily Locked On podcast and now a newsletter for your favorite NBA team. So go to lockedondaily.com and find that newsletter for your favorite NBA team. The season is only a few games old, guys, and already the 76ers have found themselves on the wrong side of an NBA investigation, a $100,000 fine for improper statements about Joel Embiid's health, and a technical foul for Joel Embiid for waving a towel on the sideline in street clothes during an opponent's free throw attempt. Is this all coincidence, or is it all connected? Let's hear first from Locked On 76ers host Kayla Santiago with her take.
Can the NBA really slap on this organization? Because there has been no telltale as to when Joel Embiid will come back. So clearly, if Nick Nurse is not going to back down and his mindset is to protect his players, fine. But then it's going to be fine after fine after fine coming the way to this organization. Now, I agree with the NBA saying we're going to give you a fine because you're not telling us anything, and these are the rules that we laid out. Listen, it stinks for Joel, but these are the rules of the NBA right now, and no transparency is in this organization. Something I don't agree with, though, is them giving Joel Embiid a fine the day after the game for the rally towel in the player's face. I mean, looking at it, the sixth man for the Philadelphia 76ers, you got to love the guy. He's always rally toweling in everybody else's face. Drake with the Raptors going in everybody's face, too. And then you got Joel Embiid just being a player hyped up for his team in the NBA the day after the game says, we reviewed this and we're going to give Joel Embiid a technical foul. It's very interesting there, Keith, that happened and that all these stories are now coming out about the center.
Very interesting. If you want to hear Keith Pompey's take, you'll have to go check out today's episode of Locked On 76ers. I want to get Matt and Hayes' take. Hayes, is this coincidence or is this conspiracy afoot?
Nothing's coincidence. I refuse to believe, and there's nothing coincidence about this. Like, you fined him and gave him a technical foul for waving a towel on the sideline. What are we talking about? This reminds me of the time, my dad's a military guy. I used to get in trouble when my sister was late on her curfew. I was in the house. I was doing what I was supposed to do. Why did I get in trouble? I'm sorry, that's a little bit of trauma, but that's what this feels like at this point with the NBA. This, like, I get it. Yes, they need to be more transparent in how they communicate injuries. I completely understand that. But, like, at some point, if you found also that they're not wrong in how they're handling these injuries, just the communication part of it, it does raise a little bit of questions for me. But the towel thing, a towel?
That's somebody from the opponent complaining. You know that's what it was. Somebody on the opponent was like, hey, that's against the rules. Can't do that if you're in street clothes. And the league's like, yeah, you're right. Okay, we'll give the tech. I don't think they should have given it. I think they should have been like, grow up, move on, get on with your season. The funny thing about this, though, is like, oh, my gosh, $100,000 fine. Oh, my gosh, the Sixers are going to have to they made $396 million in revenue last year via Forbes. I think they're good. Like, it's nothing. The bummer about this, and I'm somebody that has gone after Embiid for missing games in Denver. OK, the bummer about this is that what the NBA found was that actually Embiid's more hurt. And they're trying to project that he's healthier, which to me is a reflection that Joel is feeling self-conscious and tired of being labeled as injury prone and that he's struggling with that. And it sucks that he is in a position where he is trying to project himself as being healthier than he is. And I can cop to have had contributed to him feeling like that, at least as far as like the online discussion goes. And that sucks. Because if a player is genuinely in that kind of shape, they need to be able to take time to get themselves right, especially when they have those kind of repeated injuries. So I will take the foul on that one. I will call a technical foul on myself. I cannot take the $100,000 fine, though, because I do not have $396 million in revenue. Ultimately, I don't think that this is any sort of conspiracy against the Sixers. I think it's a pretty nasty situation with the league's ongoing battle with teams being transparent with injuries. And this is something where the teams themselves need to take control of the situation and be more transparent, and these problems and controversy will go away.
But doesn't this whole situation feel like it's going to incentivize teams to just not say much of anything? I mean, what's like where's the give here? How are they? Because it feels like right now the NBA and teams are just butting heads on this. And you heard Kayla there saying this could result if Nick Nurse doesn't back down, this could result in fine after fine. Like, how does this get resolved?
Just be honest. I mean, all you really have to do is just be like, yeah, he's gonna be out a week. He's going to be out a week. We'll reevaluate. And then after a week, you go, no, he's not good. He's still going to miss a couple more games. And like, you can't say that like he's day to day and that's fine. But the problem with the Sixers is they have a history of being like, yeah, no, he's questionable. Probably not going to, oh, he's playing. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, no, he should be getting, nope, he's out. And that's where the league goes crazy. And there's reasons for that have to do a lot with their relationships with sports books. And that's just like the reality of it. And I understand the players and teams are like, well, we don't have anything to do with that. You make the money from it and you want the money. And like, this is the consequence of having partnerships. There just needs to be a little bit better transparency. If the NFL, for as powerful as it is and as opaque as it can be, if they are able to have better transparency than you are having an issue and you need to get your teams in line. This is about teams and not players.
Hayes, do you sympathize with 76ers fans who may feel like there's a little bit of an agenda going on here, that their coach and their front office is just doing what's best for the team and what's best for Embiid and what might help them win a few games in the future? Do they have every right to feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, they have every right to feel the way that they're going to feel, but it doesn't change the facts of the matter. It's like, to Matt's point, like just communicate, just be open. Like, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to, the NBA is going to come out and force you and say, no, Joel needs to play in this game. Like, you just need to be open and honest and help get the NBA off your back. At some point, you have to change what you do if you notice that you are being targeted, even if you feel you're being targeted. So the fan base has every right to it because they're the ones that have no control in this situation. They're just rooting for their team, wishing the best for their team. But as far as the people who are making the decisions on the 76ers, if the NBA is coming down on you, you're just going to have to change what you're doing.
Okay, before we get out of here, it is Ocean's 11 tonight, 11 games on the slate. What will you be paying close attention to, Matt? Which of these matchups? Maybe it's a player. What are you going to be paying close attention to tonight?
I'm actually on League Pass tonight. I'm on NBA Bet Stream for Knicks and Heat, so I'm going to be dialed into that one. But I am going to be keeping a close eye on Lakers Cavaliers on my second screen. That's a great matchup. Cavs might right now be the best team in the league, and that's including Boston. Like they might be. That's how good they've been. So I'm really excited to see that Lakers Cavs matchup. But I think Knicks Heat is going to be probably a different game than people think it is. I don't think it's going to be a defensive battle. I think this is going to be a little bit of a shootout. I think both these teams are finding themselves offensively more than the defensive end. Those are the two that I've got my eyes on tonight.
Yeah, me, it's of course my team, the Bulls against the Orlando Magic first and foremost, because I'm going to be selfish. Like the Bulls offense, how does it pair up against the Orlando Magic's defense? I think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Probably think the Bulls are going to get their butts kicked tonight, but nonetheless, I'm a Bulls fan. Punishment is part of the game for me. And then other than that, definitely New York, Miami. I'm interested in both these teams. I like a lot of both these teams' rosters, and I'm hoping that New York starts getting on the right path, and maybe some of that talk around Karl Anthony Towns could start going down a little bit.
Nikola Vucevic revenge game, yes or no, Hayes?
I want to say yes, but Wendell Carter owns them every time they play against each other.
Tough trade.
Yeah.
All right. If you like what you heard today, make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On NBA podcast and check out Locked On NBA Game Time. It's a recap show right after the games are over. So all those games that Matt and Hayes just talked about. If you want to get analysis on those right away, make sure you are watching that. Subscribe to newsletters. Check out your favorite team's Locked On podcast. It's free. It's every day. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. We'll see you right back here on the next episode of Locked On NBA.